Welcome to Pleasurology Island. I'm Free Thought Steve, the lone pleasurologist. Welcome to another meeting of the pioneers of Pleasurology. I'm trying to explain to you before I die so I can leave this behind me and perhaps someone else will pick it up somewhere. My theory of using cannabis body-mind pleasurology as a form of self-therapy, as a form of self-transformation, as a form of emotional self-transformation, so that we can become more emotionally healthy than we are at present. I explained the theory of Wilhelm Reich and his concept of emotional armoring, and his belief that emotional armoring interferes with orgasm, that it interferes with all kinds of feeling, basically. And how I read Wilhelm Reich's theory back in 1972, beginning of 1972, and it was the following summer that I started doing pleasurology exercises, muscle loosening up exercises, breathing exercises, and basically emotional expression, sort of catharsis exercises, as a part of the Pinecrest Drama Workshop first. And then when I went back to school in the fall, in an experimental theater type production of a play called Tom Paine, I got a chance to do a lot more muscle loosening, emotional release. And then I dropped out of school and found myself one night on a lonely highway. It was Christmas night. It was the night of Christmas Day. I'd spent Christmas Day pretty much all alone down at the beach, and then came back and was trying to get to the family cabin in Paradise Road, where I had spent some time, or I wanted to spend some time, because it was the only place that was there. All my family were out of town that Christmas. They didn't know I was going to be coming back to Santa Barbara. And so they were all off somewhere else. So there was nobody around, and I just thought I'd go out to the cabin. So I hitchhiked a ride out there, but I missed the turnoff. I ended up getting dropped off in the middle of the night, a few miles beyond the turnoff that I needed to go to. I didn't know how far back it was. And it was completely dark and it was too dangerous to walk along that highway to try and get back there. So I was trying to hitchhike on Christmas night, the night when we're supposed to be full of, good cheer and peace, goodwill toward men, and a constant stream of traffic was going the way I wanted to go, back along the highway a few miles where I had come. And nobody would stop for me. I was hitchhiking. It was dark. It was hard for them to see me. And I was just feeling so desolate and, had my thumb out for a long time. And then I thought, people, honestly, show some love here. Show some human kindness. So I was standing there, instead of having my thumb out like that, I was just standing there with both arms open. And their headlights would, light me up as they went by one after another. And I was just standing there sort of pleading, help me out here, people. And nobody was helping me because they were afraid, to pick up a hitchhiker, because who knows, maybe I'm a serial killer. And, they don't want to pick up a serial killer on Christmas night. But I just thought that it was so heartbreaking that we human beings are so frightened of each other that they wouldn't stop to help me at all. And I just felt sorry for them. I felt sorry for all of us as a human species, that we live under conditions where we don't trust each other. And we can't know whether someone that we pick up is someone trustworthy or not. And that the human race is so isolated and so frightened of each other. And I felt this is such a I still feel it's such a tragic situation, that we are all so frightened of each other and isolated. So I was just standing there with my arms out, and I was not only feeling sorry for myself because I was stuck out on the road there, in the middle of the night, and It was getting cold. It was the middle of winter, it was December. It wasn't snowing or anything like that, but it was cold. And so I was just crying, the tears were just streaming down my face, and I was just crying my heart out for the whole human race. And it was really a wonderful experience for me emotionally to go through that, to get so broken down that I couldn't help just giving up and crying and just feeling like life is just too fucking sad. And I just cried and cried and cried. And crying, that was the first time that I really let go and cried. I'd been doing emotional release ever since Pinecrest Drama Workshop, maybe 4 months or 5 months earlier. But I'd been letting out anger. Anger's the easiest one for me to let out. And so I was doing a lot of anger release. And then I was doing some yelling and screaming and like a fear release in the play that I was in. I was doing a lot of shouting and stuff like that and screaming and stuff, but I didn't do any crying until that night by the side of the road where I was stuck out there and nobody was stopping for me. And I just felt so sorry for all of us that were so frightened of each other. And it was great for me to totally let go and just cry and cry and cry and cry and cry. And then when I finally was cried out, I quit holding my arms out like that because I thought that's just going to freak people out more, just seeing me standing there with my arms out, pleading for help. And I better just go back to sticking out my thumb, And it wasn't long after that a guy picked me up and gave me a ride. And he happened to be going down the road I wanted to go around and drop me off, within a short walking distance of the cabin where I wanted to stay. And so everything turned out all right. But that was a very healing thing. And since then, when I get sad, I have been able to cry. And if I am really, really sad, I have been able to just sob and sob and sob and not hold it in myself. Because I knew from reading Wilhelm Reich that holding our emotions in is a wrong thing to do. Because it makes us get armored up. It makes us tense up to hold all those emotions in. And I was wanting to do just the opposite. I have this philosophy of emotional flow through, that whenever my emotional brain releases a burst of emotional energy of any sort, I try and let it, instead of containing it, I try and let it flow through me and right out my system. And oftentimes I'll do it with a big sigh or a moan or a groan. All different, depending on what emotion I'm feeling. If it's just a surge of embarrassment from something stupid that I've done, 30 years ago that I can't forget, that I made some stupid mistake, and I get embarrassed about it every time I remember, I will sigh it out. I'll sigh the embarrassment out. And it's important to let your throat engage in that, And people don't do that. People are silent. People do not make inarticulate sounds with their throat. They don't make just sounds. Because they're worried about that other people will think they're crazy or they'll ask what's wrong or whatever. And people can't just let each other, express their emotions without being worried about it. If somebody sighs, let them sigh. You don't have to ask them what it's about unless they want to tell you. But if they're just having a thought, let them sigh, let them do emotional flow through. So that way, when my emotional brain releases a burst of energy, and I just sigh it out, and then I let go of that thought, whatever it was, I'm free to let go of it. Once I've expressed the emotion that went along with remembering that embarrassing incident or whatever it was, once I have expressed the emotion, I can let go of the thought, and there will be no tension left in me. If I get embarrassed about it, and my emotional brain releases some energy, and I tense up, because I don't want to let that energy be expressed. I don't want anybody else to know that I'm feeling that energy. So I keep myself silent. And then I have to push that embarrassing thought out of my mind so it won't keep embarrassing me. I have just created a whole bunch of tension in my emotional system, in my emotional brain, and in my whole organism, because the emotional brain flows out into every part of our organism, one way or another. What happens in our emotional brain affects every other part of our body, every single cell, because of the hormones that can be released. They go to every cell. And the autonomic nervous system goes throughout the body. And anyway, the emotional brain affects what's going on in our body. So if we are holding in something, like if we're really, really sad and we don't let ourselves really get sad and cry about it as often as we need to until we have finished our sadness with that event. If we don't do that, and it may take weeks to do that if it's a very sad event, we get armored. We get chronically tense because our emotional brain tenses up our muscles, and it changes what's happening with our autonomic nervous system. And our emotional brain will shut itself down, will inhibit itself. And then we start feeling less. We have blocked off our feelings if we haven't allowed ourselves to get sad about that event and let that sadness flow through us. We mustn't be afraid of our emotions, even when they're strong, strong emotions. That's exactly when it's important to let those emotions flow through us and push them out of ourselves. Get that energy out of ourselves instead of holding it in and hiding it so that it becomes a permanent part of ourself. If we can let the energy from that event and the memory of that event, if we can let the emotional energy flow out of ourselves every time that our emotional brain thinks about that event, brings up a surge of emotions, if we can breathe it out, cry it out, sigh it out, sob it out, laugh it out, whatever we need to do, get angry about it, growl it out, whatever. If we can process that emotional energy and get it flowing through our system and out of us, emotional flow through, then our emotional brain can settle back down, particularly if we've been practicing our relaxation exercises, our emotional relaxation exercises, meditating, doing Zen meditation, relaxing our whole body, doing rhythmic breathing, slow rhythmic breathing, all of the relaxation pleasurology exercises, so that we know what it's like to be relaxed, so that we've learned what it's like to just be calm and relax. Then, after we have finished our emotional flow through, and we have discharged the energy that has surged up from our emotional brain into consciousness, and that energy is gone now, then we know how to deliberately go back to a relaxed mode of operating our emotional brain. So we have to learn and practice the habit of staying relaxed and knowing how it feels to shift our emotional brain back into calmness mode after we have done emotional catharsis, emotional flow through, and gotten the energy out of ourselves. Then it's important for us to calm down again. And of course, if we're lucky enough to be with a tender nest of friends who will give us a sandwich hug, or just an ordinary hug, or a little group massage, or anything like that, any kind of physical nurturing that we can get from affectionate friends will soothe our emotional brain and calm us down. But it's important that we also be able to calm ourselves if there doesn't happen to be anybody around. It's important that we're not dependent entirely on the presence of others to help us feel nurtured and calm and safe. Remember, we're trying to get our emotional brain ideally back into the same feeling that we would have if we were a baby being held in its mother's arms or its father's arms or a brother and sister's arms, and being held and cuddled and caressed and taken care of. We need to be able to understand that we're in a safe place. If we're by ourselves, that we're in a safe place and nobody is going to bother us where we are. And we can give ourselves that nurturing. We have to love ourselves and give ourselves that calmness and say, okay, I love myself. I've made my body feel good by doing my muscle loosening exercises. I've gotten high on cannabis. That makes me feel good. I'm, calm because I'm in a Zen state of mind where my mind is not running away with me with a lot of thoughts and stuff. I've got my thought stream, calm and focused, and I'm thinking about something pleasant, not something unpleasant. And I can do anything I want. I can give myself anything that's available to help me calm down, to help me feel safe and nurtured. And music is one of those things. And so I feel it's very important for each of us to select the music that makes us feel the calmest and the most peaceful. And music is a very individual thing. Different music will make different people feel calm. But the main thing is, don't listen only to music that is a hard, fast beat, or rock music, hip hop, any kind of music that has a strong driving beat. That kind of music is intended to get us up and active and go through our day actively. And most of us spend most of our time being active and going through the day, one thing after another, after another, after another. And we need that kind of music, to drive us, to give us a little energy so we can get through the stuff that we have to do all day. And we never have enough time to do everything we want to do, and we're always in a little bit of a hurry. And so in Cannabis Body Mind Pleasurology, relaxation is the foundation of Pleasurology. And so what we want to do, relaxation is what makes possible super euphoric sex and all other really nice emotional states of euphoria. Having our emotional brain calm and relaxed. That's the key. And so we need to be able to switch out of the active mode. There's nothing wrong with being in the active mode, but a lot of us don't know how to switch out of the active mode and switch into relaxed mode, calmness mode. I'm just right here, right now, just enjoying the present moment, listening to some music that is calming music, that doesn't have a strong, fast beat. It can have a beat. I have some nice music that I'll let you listen to that has a beat of around 50 beats per second, 50 beats per minute, because our heart rate is 72 beats per minute. And so this music at 50 beats per minute is even slower than our normal heartbeat. And so that helps kind of slow us down. And it does have a regular beat, but it doesn't have a real strong drum to it. But there's a slow, steady rhythm all the way through. It's very good for doing rhythmic breathing, pranayama, where you can breathe in for 8 counts, hold the breath for 8 counts, breathe out for 8 counts, and then relax for 8 counts, breathing in and out very shallowly, and then do that again. A nice deep breath for 8 counts, hold it for 8 counts, Gently let it out for 8 counts, and then relax all your muscles in the chest and stomach for 8 counts, and breathing very shallowly down in your stomach. As I mentioned last time, diaphragmatic breathing is a key skill for us to learn. And I have a picture here. This is a drawing of the chest, and up right below the neck you can see the rib cage, and the lungs are inside the rib cage, and so is the heart there that you can see in the center. Below the heart you see a funny sort of thing right here. This is the diaphragm muscle, and what they've done is they've cut away the diaphragm muscle on this side, but it actually comes right across here, and it kind of comes like a dome, like this. And this is the muscle we breathe with for diaphragmatic breathing. And when we breathe in, the muscle moves down like that. And it draws the lungs down, and it draws air into the lungs because this diaphragm muscle moves down. But you have to have your stomach relaxed and your waist muscles relaxed in order to allow that diaphragm muscle to move down, because your stomach will then kind of protrude forward and the air will fill your lungs up above them. So diaphragmatic breathing is really key to learning how to relax and feel safe and calm. Safe and calm, peaceful and relaxed. It's a nice little mantra. Safe and calm, peaceful and relaxed. And when we talk to our emotional brain understands the meaning of the words that we're saying and that we're visualizing in our minds. Safe and calm, peaceful and serene. Safe and calm, peaceful and relaxed. So, I've been trying to explain that relaxation, this state of relaxation and feeling nurtured and safe and feeling good feelings about ourselves, feeling positive self-worth. We get positive self-worth when other people give us nurturing affection or give us praise. If we've done something nice, or if they thank us for doing something nice and we know we've done something nice for them and we know that they're happy with what we've done for them and that they like us, we get a glow of self-worth, of feeling we approve of ourselves. We feel like a good person when we've been able to do something for someone else that has made them happy. And we should feel like a good person when we've been able to do something for ourselves that makes us happy. Because the happier we are, the more nicely we're going to treat other people. And therefore, it's a pro-social thing. That means it's good for other people when we make ourselves as happy as possible. So when we're able to make ourselves feel really good, when we've learned how to relax, we know how to make our body feel good, we know how to calm our emotions, we know how to steady our attention and clear our mind of thoughts so that we can relate to other people and hear what they have to say to us, because we have our own mind quiet and free of thoughts. So what you're saying to me can come right into my attention and into my consciousness, and I can pay very close attention not only to the words that you're saying, but also the expression on your face. What's the emotional expression? What's the expression, the tone of voice? What tone of voice are you using? What is being expressed emotionally by your tone of voice? What emotion is your voice expressing? I can observe these things and let my emotional brain observe them if I know how to clear my mind of my own thoughts by doing a little bit of Zen meditation. And that is really essential for a good relationship. with someone else, being able to clear our mind of our own thoughts and focus on them and really absorb what they're saying to us, what they're telling us, and how they're feeling. And our own emotional brain will respond to how the other person is feeling without our even knowing it. Unconsciously and automatically, there's a certain part of our emotional brain that mirrors the emotion of the other person. Emotions in that way are contagious from one person to another. They spread very easily from one person to another. And so that makes it easy when we're talking to someone who is sad. It makes it easy for us to empathize with them and feel sad along with them. And that will make them feel better that there's someone who knows how sad they're feeling and who shares, who is sad for them because they're feeling sad. And that's a comforting, nurturing thing to do, to empathize with someone like that. And so empathy is one of the things that is key to cannabis, body-mind pleasurology, is the ability to empathize with others, to get on the same emotional wavelength with them, to share their emotions, and make them feel heard if they're telling a story. They've told us the story, and they know that we have heard what they have told us. We've heard it and understood it, and we understand how sad they are about it, if it happens to be a sad story. So this is a key for a healthy relationship with someone else. A lot of people, we're so wrapped up in our own thoughts and our own mind and so forth that we just see about 10% of what the other person is actually sending our direction. We only see about 10% of that. And so the way we respond to them is not as sensitive. We may misunderstand what they're saying. We may ignore a lot of emotional things that they're trying to convey to us. But because we're so wrapped up in our own thoughts and our own chaotic consciousness. Remember, we're trying to create not a chaos in consciousness, but a cosmos, an orderly consciousness, a stable consciousness that is able to perceive the world clearly, and a consciousness where our attention is fixed just where we want it to be. It's not darting around from one thing to another, but our attention is stable, our consciousness is stable, and our emotions are calm, and we are receptive to the outside world. If we are just producing our own thoughts all the time with no control over it, it's like we're not receptive. Our consciousness cannot be fully receptive to someone else because our consciousness is creating too many mental images and it's too full of those mental images. There's a story about a Zen teacher in Japan who gave one of his students a teacup and started pouring tea into it. And when the teacup got full, it started spilling over and was burning the student's hands. But the student didn't feel like he could take the cup away because the teacher hadn't given him permission to. So he was holding it there, but he's saying, teacher, the cup is full, it's overflowing. And then when he said that, the teacher stopped pouring. He put down the teapot, and he looked at the student and said, yeah, that's right. The student was supposed to get the idea that when our brain is so full of thoughts, of our own thoughts, it's not receptive. It can't take anything more in from the outside. What comes from the outside will spill out around the edges. And so that was an illustration of the importance of being able to have a receptive mind. That doesn't mean that we never think. Of course we think. We think all the time, and it's good to think. But sometimes it's more important to have a receptive mind. And when we're in a conversation and someone else is sharing their thoughts with us, then we want to be able to quiet our own thoughts so that the other person's thoughts can flow into our own consciousness. All right, so the state of being relaxed and without any internal emotional tensions is the most desirable state for us to begin with. This is calm euphoria. And once we learn how to do calm euphoria, then we can add to that sexual arousal. We can add sexual arousal to our calm euphoria and then turn it into calm, sexually aroused euphoria with calm but highly aroused sexual pleasure. And we can gradually let our consciousness fill up with that without triggering the orgasm reflex until we're ready. And then we trigger the orgasm reflex and our entire consciousness participates in the orgasm. It's a very powerful thing flowing through consciousness, the cosmic, oceanic orgasm that comes from having a cosmic consciousness, a consciousness that is orderly, stable, and full of space for the orgasm to occur, because consciousness is not cluttered with too much thought activity. Now, part of what creates tension in the emotional brain and prevents us from relaxing is all the emotional learning that we've done our entire life, and particularly our learning about sex, the kind of practical sex education that we've had. Not so much sex education that you might get in school about how to do it and how to use contraceptives and about STDs and stuff like that. That kind of sexual education, that does have an effect on us, particularly if it's sex negative in its slant. If it's sex education that is designed to persuade you to be sexually abstinent. This is basically sex negative education. It's education that has the purpose of scaring you into not being sexually active or shaming you into avoiding sexual activity of one sort or another. And most of that kind of sexual education comes from Christianity and from people who are Christians. And if you grow up in a Christian family, you may have gotten a lot of sex negative education. And that has an effect on our emotional brain. And even if you haven't grown up in a very Christian family, our society in general has a very weird attitude towards sex, because our society, European-based society, has been a Christian society for thousands of years. And Christianity has typically regarded sex as a sin, except under very, very narrow conditions. If God blesses two people and they promise to have sex with nobody else for the rest of their life, and they're going to get married permanently, then supposedly Christianity says, okay, then you can have sex with that other person. And some people, like the Catholics, say, but you can only have sex if you're not using birth control, because God only wants you to have sex if you're going to get pregnant, if you have a chance of getting pregnant. And so this leads to crazy behavior. In general, our society is now in the process of rebelling against the overly restrictive sexual ethics and rules that Christianity has had in place for 2,000 years, and that those rules have dominated our society until the first wave of the counterculture in about 1968, we had the sexual revolution, and things have been very different since then. However, we're still in the process of rebelling against those old rules, and I don't think we have a very coherent set of new sex-positive ethics and rules. And that's what we need to have if we're going to be relaxed about our sexual activity, whether it's solo sex, which a lot of Christian groups condemn masturbation, even though it's the safest and simplest way of satisfying our natural sex drive. See, Christianity doesn't view sexuality as one of our natural drives that simply needs to be satisfied in a safe and healthy way on a periodical basis. Christianity says, no. Unless sexual activity occurs in marriage, then it's a sin. Then it's wrong. It's lust. It's not, a natural sexual drive. And so they try and encourage people to be sexually abstinent entirely, to not even use their sex drive until they get married. And there's two things that can happen there. Either you wait until you finish your education and all that, and you find somebody you meet and you get married quite late in life, and you're, by late in life, at late 20s, at the earliest, mid to late 20s, and you've tried to be sexually celibate until then, sexually abstinent until then, and that's a really long time to wait. Or otherwise, they want you to get married like when you're a freshman in college, so that you'll have some outlet for your sex drive, and you won't be going around, dating other people and having more than one partner before you get married, etc. And so that results in people getting married too young, before they're even ready to get married, and they even have any idea what relationships are about. And then they're stuck in a marriage that, 5-10 years down the line, they're going to realize, wait a minute, what the heck was I doing? I didn't know anything about relationships. I didn't know this person very well when we got married, and now I'm just really not happy in this situation. I want something different. So those are the two things that happen when young people are not allowed to safely engage in sexual activity, in fun, sexually arousing activity, sexually satisfying activity, from the time that their sex drive becomes active at puberty, becomes strongly active at puberty. And so next time, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some other cultures and the totally different way that they have approached sexuality. Because for myself, when I was young, and even though I had cast off Christianity, my emotional brain was still very much affected by the Christian conditioning that I had gotten, the Christian emotional conditioning about sex being sinful that I had ever since I was 12 years old. My emotional brain was still very much influenced by it, and as a result, I had a lot of trouble when I first was trying to have partner sex. Full-on partner sex. I'd done a lot of petting and heavy petting and stuff like that, and frottage and whatever. But when it came to actual intercourse, I found myself not being aroused, and I didn't understand why. But it was my Christian unconscious that I wasn't consciously aware of, but it was my emotional Christian unconscious that was still affecting my emotional brain and causing me to feel guilty and anxious and ashamed when I was trying to have sex. Even though intellectually I didn't believe in Christianity anymore, my emotional brain was still being influenced by the Christian emotional education, or I might say miseducation, that I had received for many years. So next time, I'm going to talk more about non-Christian, sex-positive cultures and how young people are allowed to have sex, both as children and as teenagers, in these cultures. There are probably hardly any of them still existing, but these were traditional cultures that existed, let's say in the 1800s, up to the 1800s at least, and some of them even later. I'm going to discuss then what is a reasonable basis for making sexual decisions, and what kind of sexual activity should we feel is generally approvable, praiseworthy, and what kind of sexual activity should we avoid, and a realistic basis for it, not a religious basis, not a spiritual basis, because nobody can know anything about God. Nobody can know anything about any invisible, non-physical entity, starting with whether any of them exist or not. We can't know any of that. So it's crazy for us to base our own sexual activity on worrying about what some imaginary invisible entities might think about or approve of or disapprove of in our behavior. We shouldn't be doing our sexual behavior to please some imaginary beings or to please our parents or anybody in the church. We should be having sexual activity that is good and healthy and satisfying for ourselves and our partners. We should be very concerned and considerate of the health of our partners, just as much as we are concerned and considerate about our own health. We should not be simply stupid, reckless, clueless pleasurologists, ignorant pleasurologists. We should be intelligent pleasurologists, because pleasure means not just pleasure right now, but pleasure throughout our lives. So we don't want to do things in the present moment that are going to make us unhappy later on. We want to be as intelligent as possible about our sexual activity, but we don't want to have any unnecessary guilt or shame about it, and we want to be able to satisfy our natural sexual drives with as much pleasure and with the most pleasurable orgasms as we possibly can. So I'll talk more about that next time. Thanks for listening. See you then.